But no human organization prevails solely by dint of their own devices and personnel. A substantial portion of the power of secret societies comes from hitching a ride on coincidence. In your opening statement, you said that it remains to be seen whether the occult connections I study are deliberate or merely coincidence. To me, it's the same thing. Ritual cannot rely exclusively on human machinations to obtain the full effect. Forteans humorously kick around the idea of a library angel that works for some of us. If I need research material, sometimes I get it not because I diligently searched the stacks at Cornell University, but because the material I wanted presented itself to me randomly, like Hannibal Lecter says in Silence of the Lambs, with desperate randomness. That's from Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare by Michael A. Hoffman II. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. I'm sure a lot of you have watched and or seen the President's State of the Union address, and all I can say to it is that it was filled with pretty much the same kind of platitudes that I would have expected. With a nod to the middle class that is slowly being destroyed by the very corporations that he claims now that he wants to rein in somewhat from their sending jobs overseas. In fact, it seemed like his speech was a rehash of previous speeches by previous administrations, by previous presidents, all saying the same thing that lead nowhere. Because anything of substance that he talked about in his speech yesterday, trying to make it into a populist appeal for the middle classes by making his focus jobs, because everybody is really feeling the pain of joblessness in this country, and the middle class is really suffering under the yoke of all of the problems that have beset us in our recession, that he was at pains to remind us was given to him prior to his taking the presidency last year. Trying to sound very much like a man of the people, as it were, which is pretty much what we expected. He had a little bit of a touche against the Supreme Court for their ruling that corporations can more or less buy United States elections with impunity, now with the imprimatur of law. Even though this is the fact of life in this country now, we're just giving the color of law to the corporations to do as they already do. So he has a little touche against them, and a couple words here and there about the greed factor and about how certain companies are rewarding failure. Well, if you want to talk about rewarding failure, Mr. Obama, why don't you talk about getting rid of Ben Bernanke? And why don't you talk about getting rid of Timothy Geithner? And why don't you talk about firing a lot of other people in your administration, including your selection as head of the TSA? Why don't you talk about dumping him? Why don't you talk about getting rid of Janet Napolitano, who is a complete and utter failure? Instead, you keep her in her office rewarding that failure. Why should we expect anything different? Because you tell us one thing, and then you do the complete opposite behind the scenes. Much of what he talked about was creating new jobs in green energy. Green energy. That mystical idea of all of these fancy new jobs in green energy production and in all of the associated areas surrounding it, and how we need to be the champions of this for the world. Otherwise, some other country is going to jump on the bandwagon and really pummel us down the road. Well, it might be a good idea, and it might sound good on paper, and it might even be something that would be worthy of pursuit, but without any motive, without any direction. Just more platitudes to make it sound good. We're going to create all of these wonderful jobs for you, and they're going to be in all these high-tech new areas. Now, I also noticed that he did bring up nuclear power. Another complete fallacy. As you will note, no doubt, there will be absolutely no action on nuclear power by this administration or by anybody in Congress. Mark my words right now, today, there will be none. And when it comes to offshore drilling, which he brought up, platitudes for the masses. Period. There will be no new offshore drilling for oil by this government. It will not be allowed. They will not sell the rights. No companies will take advantage of it because it will not be done. Mark my words. So what is the end result and what is to be learned from the State of the Union? And that is this, that this president, when he speaks, people listen because he has a gift of reading a teleprompter or reading from his prepared notes when he doesn't stumble or make mistakes, of gathering people's attention in much the same way that Ronald Reagan did. But what he says and what he does are two completely different things. He put on a cloak of some sort of populism by trying to put the focus on the middle class and on jobs, while at the same time totally failing to point out the fact that Wall Street, the one that they bailed out, the one that he talked about as being the savior of this country in his speech, they are the ones with their financial speculation that practically destroyed this economy. And while he has some little tiny bits and pieces of things that he wants to do, nothing of substance to rein in the power of these greedy fucking companies. And you will not see it either, because anything that he puts on in the way of populism is nothing but a mask to disguise the fact that he is a pawn for the very same agencies. And this is the reason why, despite massive amount of people coming out against Ben Bernanke, he is still supporting his reappointment to Fed chair. And he is still standing behind Timothy Geithner, even though he is a known criminal. Because he is at the beck and call of the Wall Street barons. And they are at the beck and call of all of the corporations and the mega rich who own them. And that's what this administration is all about. And any changes that come as a result of this, mark my words, will result in more power and more riches going to corporations. And if any new jobs are created, and I say if with a very big if any new jobs are created, they will be no kind of productive jobs. They will be made-up jobs. They will be make-work jobs. And as far as his infrastructure program, well, this has supposedly been in the works for the last year. And I've yet to see one job created by the so-called stimulus. And now he wants to have a new jobs program. I wonder if we'll get a single job out of this new program that's going to spend who knows how much money. And as far as his spending freezes go, nothing but a sham. A sham. A total sham. Let's not direct our gaze at anything of importance. Let's just talk about fluff and mummery. And he certainly was very good at that. Thank you. Good night.